So please consider doing something about what I'm talking about, even if it's not with us. Okay? 7 out of 10 people in the UK don't have a will, which is wonderful news to me, otherwise I would be out of business. Why is that, do you think? Why is that? Anyone got a clue? What's the most heard excuse that I get? Haven't got time. That'll do me. Hey. It's actually time. That's the most heard excuse I get. People say to me, I'm really, really busy. I've got all my emails to do. I've got a property to see, blah, blah, blah. And solicitors aren't open in the evenings at weekend, which is absolute rubbish, because last month was Free Will Week, or Free Will Month. That means you could have gone to a solicitor and got a free will. No advice, no help. They'd probably be your executors, possibly. But look, if you want a free will, what are you doing in this room? You're aspiring property multimillionaires. For God's sake, get it done properly. What's the second most excuse that I hear? Why people don't have a will? Nope. Nope. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, need. People believe it will go to their other half. Well, we've already seen this with Rick Mail. It doesn't all go to your other half, okay? So this is what happens. If you die without a will, you're governed under the rules of intestacy, which means that not everything's going to go to your spouse. Okay? If you're a single person dying without a will, your other half's entitled to nothing. Let that resonate a minute. Nothing. Now, there's an urban myth here that there's a thing called common law husband or wife. Doesn't exist in law. You are either married or in a civil partnership, or you are a single person. And the cost of dying, if you die without a will, they reckon across the UK is going to cost about £5,000 to sort out the mess you left behind as a minimum. And inheritance tax will have to be paid first on anything you own above £325,000. Intestacy. This is the intestacy flowchart. So in other words, this is to show you what happens if you die without a will. And we've got a copy of this if you want it. It's in our estate planning guide, which I'll show you about at the end of the presentation. So if you die without a will in the UK, you've got no living relatives, who gets your assets? You said the Crown? Yeah, good man. Can you catch? No, you can't, because I didn't throw it far enough. Okay, exactly, it's the Crown. So if you die in Cornwall, good man, yes, that's right. And who is the Duchy of Cornwall? Prince of Wales, and his name is? William. And what was the former one? Doesn't matter, okay, fine. Well, the former one was his dad and his missus, the Queen. She's not my Queen, but there you go. The Duchy of Cornwall, sorry, that's Camilla counting. But if you die in Lancashire, who gets your money then? Oh, did you want a chocolate as well? Flipping it. Who gets your money if you die in Lancashire? One meeting, please. Thank you. Right, it's the Duchy of Lancaster, okay? I don't want anyone slagging off the royal family, okay? They need the money to lend to Andrew. Some big legal bills coming. Yeah? Seriously. Right, okay, Dave. Dave and I have been talking for about 6 months. Very, very successful guy, building up a portfolio of about 8 HMOs with his partner, Joe. They weren't married, had no kids, okay? All of the properties were in Dave's name, and Dave was getting all the money from the rents paid to his business bank account. Not unusual in property circles, okay? Things going quite well. Dave's jetting about all over the place, buying property, talking to landlords, speaking to his brokers, etc., etc. Generally driving up and down the M4 in a very, rather nice white Range Rover, if you like, that sort of thing. Now, the unfortunate thing is, one evening he drove home with Joe at his side, had a heart attack. Joe managed to pull the car over to the hard shoulder where he had another heart attack and died on the spot. He meant to get a will because for 6 months he'd been telling me, I've got to get a will. I'm so busy though. Can we do it next week? Can I talk to you next week? You phone him next week. Busy, 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 busy. Didn't get it done. Now these are the repercussions. Now, they weren't married. They had no kids. Under the law of intestacy, Dave's parents inherited. and Joe got nothing. All of the mortgages were in his name, okay? Mortgage companies are not renowned for their sense of humour, and there was no life insurance because, of course, he was too busy to organise that. And so the mortgage companies wanted their money back, okay? Their contract was with Dave. He's no longer around. All of the bank accounts were also frozen, okay? Because they didn't know what was happening. So there's no money in, no money out. Just remember that. Because the tenants' rents were also returned to them, and they're concerned about getting evicted. Obviously, no money going in and no money going out. Utility bills, mortgages, council tax can't be paid. So they resort to start sending threatening letters. Good fun, that. Value of the portfolio, give or take, was around about £800,000, all in Dave's name, all right? So inheritance tax has to be paid on anything above £325,000 because he's a single man. So balance of the estate, take 325 from 800,000, gives you a balance of 475. That means an inheritance tax bill of 40% of that, £190,000. Oh dear, just because Dave was a bit busy. So what we could have done, we'd written some wills. Obviously, I've been speaking to them about that. I suggested they own the property in a different way. They own percentages each, and she could have been left Dave's half. Now, obviously, if they weren't married, there still would have been inheritance tax, but only £30,000 and not £190,000, because Dave would have owned half the portfolio, £400,000 worth, okay? Now, you can own assets, as I say, up to 325, so you take 325 from the £400,000, that gives you a taxable estate of £75,000. Tax that at 40% only gives you £30,000 and not £190,000. Joe could have raised that money by doing a remortgage or selling one of the properties. And if they'd been married, of course, there wouldn't have been any inheritance tax because there's no inheritance tax between spouses. Anyone want to hazard a guess as to what that figure represents? £5.7 billion. That'll do me. The amount of inheritance tax paid in 2023. Can you catch? A lot of money, isn't it? It's a £4 billion rise, I reckon. Forecast to rise to 7.2 billion in 23-24. And not having a will also mean some other challenges here as well. You could have avoided or reduced inheritance tax. We've already seen that in a couple of examples, Rick Mail and Dave. You have no say about who gets what. That's when people start squabbling, and there's a lot of aggravation. Partner, your family, they're going to suffer some kind of unnecessary financial hardship because everything's locked up. You're not be able to leave any specific gifts that you've got to people, and that's when families start squabbling as well. And children, if you've got children under the age of 18 and you die as, say, a single parent, or if both parents die, those kids are going to have to go into care until the court decides who looks after them. Someone's going to be an administrator. They're going to be appointed as an administrator. Generally, that will be a solicitor because you didn't write a will and therefore you didn't provide who your executor is going to be. If you are partners, if you've got partners or your family, they're going to have major challenges if you run a business. Because under the Partnerships Act 1890, if you haven't got a will, if you haven't got a partnership agreement, which is something you should look into as well, your business will have to be wound up if one of the partners dies. Oh dear. If you haven't got a will, who's going to get your shares? It could be a challenge, couldn't it? And there's no instructions about your funeral either, and for a lot of people that's quite an important thing. No one knows whether or not you want to be buried or cremated or put in one of those wicker hampers. Actually, you could get a body in a wicker hamper, couldn't you? If you get it before rigor mortis has set in, you can just cut the legs up with a chainsaw and stick them in that. Break a few bones. Personally, I'm going to get, it's a casket. It's that big. It's that big. I've been studying cryogenics for many, many years, so my body's actually going to be frozen and dropped on my ex-wife. It's true. Right.
Has she got a will?
Couldn't give a sugar. Haven't seen her for a million years, and she don't love her anymore. Right. Anyone know what joint tenants means?
Yes. Joint tenants is where if you own a property with someone else, both your names can go straight on. And you have a joint tenancy, you own the property, well, it's not a share, but they're tenants in common.
Don't steal my thunder. Tenants and joint tenants, a bit like owning your table like that. Okay, it means you own it together. And conveyancing solicitors will rightly tell you if either of you die, the survivor then owns the whole of the property. Yeah? That's joint tenancy. Anything wrong with that?
Yes.
Yeah? Wait, hold your horses, because let everyone else know. Imagine that he dies, okay? Because guys, you know we die first because we work harder. Right, okay, he dies first, right? Now, guys in the room, you might find this difficult to believe, but she'll find someone a lot better looking than you, okay? It's not difficult, is it? And he'll have a massive bank balance, a really big bank balance, okay? So they get married. Now, 5 years down the line, unfortunately, they fall out and they get divorced. She owns the house. Do you think there's going to be a problem with a fight in court over that property? Maybe. What if she dies afterwards? Who then gets or she dies first? Who then gets the property? The new spouse. What if both parents die and the daughter's married a horrible spotty biker? Apologies to spotty bikers in the room, but she marries a spotty biker and he turns around and says, "I'm really sorry about your mum and dad. By the way, I don't love you anymore and I want half of what they've left you." Oh dear. Or the son, one of Simon Zuch's famous acolytes, does really, really well until things don't go really, really well. Mum and dad are now died. He's inherited part of the house and the creditors come along and say, "Can we have some of that, please?" Oh dear. Do you want to know some ways how to get round those things? At least one of you does. That's all right. That'll do me. One of you, that's fine. I don't know. I'm not on my own then. That's wonderful. Right, okay, let's look at another situation, shall we? Tenants in common. Now, tenants in common means that you own half the property each, okay? Or whatever percentage you own the property in. Now, if he dies, he wants to leave his half to his wife, but he leaves it in trust. Now, this is a fairly simple discretionary trust. These are not difficult things to understand or run. They've been around for over 1,000 years in British law. And they're not contentious as far as HMRC are concerned, all right? So he dies, he leaves his share to his wife. If she dies, the two kids get it. She's also done the same thing, so if she dies, he gets it, then the two kids get it. Now, let's just say he does die, she finds someone else who's married, got kids, etc., and they get divorced. Can he now force her to sell the property? Any answers? Yes? No. No. Correct. She only owns that half, doesn't she? That half is owned by her trust. She's the trustee, she's the beneficiary. If she wants to sell, she can, but she can't be forced to. If she needs long-term care, it's the same thing. She cannot be forced to sell an asset she doesn't personally own. Okay? Let's just say both parents die and the kids have it, okay? Daughter's getting divorced. Can they force her to sell the property then? No, because it belongs to the trust. She can sell it if she wants to. That's not a problem. The son's got creditors. Again, it's protected from that. The other thing here to think about logically is if you're all working hard to build up your assets in property, and you leave them as a direct gift to your beneficiaries, potentially kids, whoever else you want to leave them to, when no one's here forever, when they pass on, there's potentially a second raft of inheritance tax. Now take simple maths. At 40% a pop, in 3 generations, everything you've worked hard for will be gone in inheritance tax. Trusts have got to be the way to consider, at least relative to your circumstances, but there you go.